Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna. Thank you all for coming to this rather humid and warm Monday morning Srimad Bhagavatam class, and to those of us joining online via our social media YouTube platforms, a very, very warm welcome and Hare Krishna to you guys as well. We are discussing Canto 4, Chapter 26, titled King Puranjana Goes to the Forest to Hunt, and we will speak a little bit from text 7 today. So we'll do the shloka first. Please repeat. Ya evam karma niyatam vidvam kurvita manavaha karmana tena rajendra jnanena na salipyate. Ya evam karma niyatam vidvam kurveta manavaha karmana tena rajendra jnanena na salipyate. Ya evam karma niyatam vidvam kurveta manavaha karmana tena rajendra jnanena na salipyate. Karmana tena rajendra jnanena na salipyate. Ya evam karma niyatam vidvan kurvita manavaha karmana tena rajendra jnanena na salipyate. Word to word. Yaha, anyone who. Evam, thus. Karma, activities. Niyatam, regulated. Vidvan, learned. Kurvita, should perform. Manavaha, a human being. Karmana, by such activities. Tena, by this. Rajendra, O king. Jnanena, by advancement of knowledge. Na, never. Saha, he. Lipyate, becomes involved. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada ki. Translation. Nārada Muni continued to speak to King Prācīnabarhiṣat. My dear king, any person who works according to the direction of the Vedic scriptures does not become involved in fruitive activities. Purport. Just as a government may issue trade licenses in order for its citizens to act in a certain way, the Vedas contain injunctions that restrain and regulate all of our fruitive activities. All living entities have come into this material world to enjoy themselves. Consequently, the Vedas are given to regulate sense enjoyment. One who enjoys his senses under the Vedic regulative principles does not become entangled in the actions and reactions of his activities. As stated in Bhagavad Gita 3.9, Yajñarthat karmanaha, one should act only for the performance of yajna or to satisfy Lord Vishnu. Anyatra loko ayam karma bandhanaha. Otherwise, any action will produce a reaction by which the living entity will be bound. A human being is especially meant to attain liberation from the bondage of birth, death, old age, and disease. He is therefore directed by the Vedic regulative principles to work in such a way that he may fulfill his desires for sense gratification and at the same time gradually become freed from material bondage. Action according to such principles is called knowledge. Indeed, the word Veda means knowledge. The word jnanena na salipyate indicate that by following the Vedic principles, one does not become involved in the actions and reactions of his fruitive activities. Everyone is therefore advised to act in terms of the Vedic injunctions and not irresponsibly. When a person within a state acts according to laws and licenses of the government, he does not become involved in criminal activities. Man-made laws, however, are always defective because they are made by men who are prone to committing mistakes, being illusioned, cheating, and having imperfect senses. The Vedic instructions are different because they do not have these four defects. Vedic instructions are not subject to mistakes. The knowledge of the Vedas is knowledge received directly from God, and there is consequently no question of illusion, cheating, mistakes, or imperfect senses. All Vedic knowledge is perfect because it is received directly from God by the parampara, disciplic succession. In Srimad Bhagavatam 1.1.1, it is said, Tene Brahma Hridaya Adi Karvai. The original creature of this universe, known as Adi Kavi or Lord Brahma, was instructed by Krishna through the heart. After receiving these Vedic instructions from Lord Krishna himself, Brahma distributed the knowledge by the parampara system to Nārada, and Nārada in turn distributed the knowledge to Vyasa. In this way, Vedic knowledge is perfect. If we act according to Vedic knowledge, there is no question of being involved in sinful activities. We'll do Mangalacharan and then we'll get on with it. Om Ajnanatimirandasya Jnananjanashalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Tadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurum Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghurnatham Tam Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lita Shri Vishakham Vitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dina Bandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vancha Kalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhu Bhaivacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna. We'll just quickly read the translation once again. Nārada Muni continued to speak to King Prācīnabarhiṣat. My dear king, any person who works according to the directions of the Vedic scriptures does not become involved in fruitive activities. So we're discussing this chapter, which is titled King Puranjana Goes to the Forest to Hunt. I mean, have you given it a thought? I mean, there's an entire chapter about a king going to the forest to hunt. It seems like a pretty mundane activity. Like, there were kings in the past, there are like even people now. they go out hunting. What's so significant, and why did we have like a whole chapter dedicated to it? Again, because we are talking allegories, like how Nārada Muni is instructing King Prācīnabarhiṣat, giving the example, or rather referencing King Puranjana, who's nobody but all of us. Puranjana is a living entity, which is, again, refers to us. So just like how Nārada Muni is referring to King Prācīnabarhiṣat himself as Puranjana and trying to explain to him or drive home the point, this whole point of the king going to the forest to hunt represents us going out in this world, hunting down our material desires and hunting down our aspirations. So that's what they are trying to tell us in this chapter here, that in our pursuit of hunting down our material desires, or in our pursuit of hunting for things and people and places for our sense enjoyment, sometimes we may lose our discrimination and we may lose our thinking of what is right and what is wrong. So that is what Prabhupada is explaining. And then it's amazing how Prabhupada gives us the problem statement. So the problem statement is what? That we are on this ruthless, brutal hunting spree of going after or chasing our material desires, going after objects for sense gratification, and we may lose track of time, just like how King Puranjana lost here. He absolutely lost track of time. He forgot that he had a wife waiting back home. The wife, in this case, again, represents our intelligence. So we get sometimes so blinded, chasing after all these glittering, shiny objects out there, that we lose track of time, we lose our bearing of what is right or wrong. So what is the solution? Yes, we live in a material world. We have to go out, earn money, and get all these things and sustain ourselves and our family. But then if we do it by following the Vedic injunctions, or if we do it in a regulated, civilized manner, then we are free from the sinful activities that we may incur, or it will help us from a downfall. That's what Prabhupada is telling us here. So he's giving us a problem statement, and then he's giving us a solution. The solution is very simple: follow Guru, follow your Guru, follow your Shastras, follow the Vedic injunctions. We often, how often do we talk about the regulative principles within ISKCON and as devotees? Like, that's the bare minimum that we are expected. And what are these regulative principles? These regulative principles are nothing but, again, coming down from these Vedic injunctions. They are do's and don'ts for us to advance in our spiritual life, and do's and don'ts for us to achieve the final goal which Krishna wants for us, which is go back home, back to Godhead. So there was a little bit of a context of this chapter and where we are coming from. And the next, I think, we are on chapter 7, so I think another 21 texts is talking about him going to the forest. And for those who are new, the story goes like there's this king Puranjana, and he marries this very beautiful wife of his, Puranjani. Puranjana is a living entity. Puranjani is our intelligence. And after they settle down in their palace, one day he decides he wants to go out hunting. He has this desire to go and just simply go out and kill animals for reasons best known to him. He leaves his wife behind, and then he gets so absorbed in his brutal massacre of all these innocent animals that he forgets that there is a wife waiting. When he comes back, he finds that the wife is obviously very, very remorseful, and she's angry, and she's feeling neglected and whatnot. And then he starts to pacify her. But then because of these fruitive activities, because of this karma of his, how old age and disease, they attack him. So they are represented by other characters we'll know in the later part of this canto. And then so that's the plight of all of us. We are just so blinded, and in the pursuit of chasing all these desires, we just lose. We lose our bearing, and we lose our sense of discrimination. What are these Vedic injunctions that Prabhupada is talking about here in this purport? They are nothing but instructions which has come directly from Krishna, because later part in the purport, Prabhupada is actually mentioning that these regulations or these injunctions have actually been instructed by Krishna himself. So Krishna has given us free will, right? He's put us on this planet and he's given us free will. Okay, fine. You had in some previous life desire to enjoy. Okay, fine. I'm giving you this opportunity. But then he's so mindful, he's so merciful, just like a mother. Okay, fine. You want to go out in the courtyard and play, but just don't cross the gate. Make sure you're not stepping on any sharp objects. So just like that, Krishna is like, okay, fine, go out in the material world, enjoy, but I'm giving you these regulations or injunctions, and if you follow that, then you're fine. You'll stay out of trouble. Just like, it's like, driving a car. You drive a car, but then if you don't follow the traffic rules, you're in trouble. So these Vedic injunctions are like those traffic rules for us. We have the free will to drive our car. We have the free will to live our life the way we want. But then there are regulations. And they keep talking about Vedic injunctions. So we all know we have 4 main Vedas, right? Do we know what they are? Rig. Yeah. So essentially, our entire lifestyle, how we should operate, what we should do, what we should not do, are condensed in these 4 Vedas. So each of the Veda talks elaborately or emphasizes on one aspect of our life. Like, for example, Sama Veda is all about hymns and chanting and mantras and sound and rhythm and music related. Yeah, Atharva Veda, I think, is the most elaborate, which talks about a whole lot of things, right from our diet, food, what we should eat, what we should not eat, to medicine. It covers a little bit of medicine, to our lifestyle, what they call dinacharya. Dinacharya, how do you spend your day, right from the time. In fact, the Vedas also tell us what time we should be waking up. Vedas tell us we should be waking up in Brahma Muhurta. So there are so many things like that in the Veda on how we should live our life. And Prabhupada has been so merciful. He's really just very, very simplified. He simplified it really for our benefit. So when he tells us, get up and come for Mangala, which happens at around 4:30 around the world, depending on which locations, he's essentially telling us, wake up in Brahma Muhurta, which is what the Vedas are also telling us. Then if he's telling us that spend your 2 hours in the morning chanting, that's also what Vedas are telling us. They are telling us to remember Krishna when in the mode of goodness, because again, they are talking about times of the day which are sattvic, which are tamasic. Like in the evenings during sunset, they tell us that that's a very tamasic sort of a time, so we should not venture out too much. We should not, indulge in a lot of like we all know what happened to Diti and Kashyap Muni, right? They indulged in unregulated activities at the tamasic hour, and we saw the result, right? The world got Hiranyaksha and Hiranyakashipu. Like, as a kid, when I used to visit my grandparents in summer holidays, every time she wanted to chastise me or tell me, kids, why should I do this? Why should I not do that? Her one standard reply used to be, Shastras say, it's written in the Shastras. And they used to, that generation, I think even up to our mother's generation, they followed Shastra to the T, and the world was a much better place. And now look where the world is going. So that's what the Vedas tell us, how to, the dinacharya. And then they also elaborate on the varnas and ashramas. What are the duties and responsibilities of a brahmana? What are the duties and responsibilities? Essentially, it's about how we live our life. And Prabhupada has translated the elaborate teachings and complex teachings of the Vedas into the practice that we all follow. And it's exactly in line with what the Vedas are talking about, with what Shastras tell us to do. The 4 regulative principles that we follow are also, so they're not only telling us what to do, they are also telling us what not to do. So in Vedas, there is Vidhi Marg and Nishedh Marg. Vidhi Marg tells us what are the things that we should be doing, and Nishedh Marg Marg is essentially path. Vidhi is to do or process. So Vidhi Marg is a process of what we should be doing, and Nishedh Marg is what we should not be doing, what the prohibitions are, what the regulations are. So the 4 regulative principles, they fall under the Nishedh Marg. But then things like waking up early in the morning, chanting around, studying scriptures, respecting other Vaishnavas, not committing will come under Nishedh Marg. But having sattvic ahar, they all come under the Vidhi Marg. So there's this verse in Chaitanya Charitamrita, which is also, it's reference from Padma Puran. It comes in Chaitanya Charitamrita Madhya Leela, chapter 22. Apologies, I'm not very good at memorizing shlokas, so I'll have to read it out. So it says, Smartavaha satatam vishnor vismartavya na jatuchit sarve vidhi nishedaha syur etayor eva kinkaraha. So literally translated, it means that Krishna is the origin of Lord Vishnu. He should always be remembered and never forgotten at any time. All the rules and prohibitions mentioned in the Shastra should be servants of these 2 principles. So Prabhupada is explaining in that purport that there are many regulative principles in Shastras and directions given by the spiritual master. These regulative principles should act as servants of that one basic principle, which is constantly remembering Vishnu, which means when we are constantly thinking about Krishna, we are also keeping a check on ourselves that we are only doing sattvic activities, we are thinking sattvic things, we are consuming sattvic ahar. And ahar need not only be food that we take. Ahar could also be what we consume through our eyes, what we consume through our ears. And if all our ahar has to be sattvic because we are remembering Krishna, naturally our lifestyle is molded such. And then again, just like we have to do certain things, we have to absolutely not do certain things, which are again staying away from anything that is not good for us, or not good for our sadhana, not good for our bhakti. Like an example is when you're sick and you go to the doctor, like say for example you got, your stomach doesn't feel all right. You go to the doctor, he gives you medicine. Yes, you have to take the medicine, which is vidhi, which is a do. But at the same time, you have to abstain. The doctor says you have to abstain from certain things because it's going to aggravate or it's going to upset your stomach even more. So that's the nishedh, that's the prohibition, that's the regulation. That's what the Shastras also tell us, that just like we have to do certain things, we have to also not do certain things. And both are equally important and both are equally difficult. Like it's not easy to just not do something. For us who follow the sattvic ahar, in our previous lives before we came to Krishna consciousness, we might have been putting all sorts of things in our stomach. Yeah? And just to give that up was so difficult initially. How do we live without whatever, So it's like that. So both are equal, but both are equally difficult. We have to overcome that because the Shastra says, because it's an instruction that we have to follow. So it's said that these prohibitions are there to actually protect the pillars of dharma. Fine, we will live a sattvic lifestyle, but just imagine, we live a sattvic lifestyle, but then we don't follow these prohibitions and regulation. What's the whole point? It's cheating, it's hypocrisy, right? Yeah, you wake up in the morning at 4, do your rounds, everything is fine, great morning program, and then you go out in the world and do all the prohibited things. What's the point? Or you do all the prohibited things and come and do like most sincere 16 rounds. There's no point. So it has to be done together and in harmony. So just like the Vidhi Marg or the Nishedh Marg is the prohibitions that protect, the Vidhi Marg helps us cultivate the Sattva Guna or the mode of goodness. Later on in the purport, Prabhupada is also talking about law and order. I mean, these regulations apply only to us human beings. If you think about it, Krishna as a supreme controller is actually regulating the whole universe. But man, being man, thinks that we're too smart, we know everything, and that's why they need to give us these books and give us these scriptures to teach us. Like, think about it. The sun, the moon, the planets, the animals, the plants, they are so regulated. They have not read Shastras. But they know exactly what they should be doing, at what time they should be doing. Imagine the sun at one point decides, I don't want to rise at 6:30 today. Let me hit my snooze button and rise at 7. Has that ever happened? No. It's regulated, and that's why the world is functioning in such perfect harmony, in such perfect rhythm. Because they don't overstep their boundaries. They are not uncivilized or unregulated. But man, even after possessing the intelligence, we still need to be told what to do, what not to do. The government is telling us, the teachers are telling us, the parents are telling us. We instruct each other what to do, what not to do. Why do we need to be told? But it is what it is. And that's why the Shastras. We all know the episode of Samudra Manthan, don't we? Do you know? Churning of the ocean? The episode where the Devas and Asuras, do you know the story? Yes, you do? Of how the Devas and the Asuras actually churned the ocean in pursuit of Amrit, nectar. So again, sorry. Nectar, let's call it nectar. Elixir of life. So there was this one time when the Devas, they lost all their power and opulence, and they started to lose to Asuras. How the Devas, lived so lavishly. Indra was ruling the heaven, Varuna was ruling the ocean, Agni Dev was the god of fire, so on and so forth. At one point, they lost their opulence and power, so they went to Vishnu. They went to Vishnu and said, we need the elixir of life. We need the nectar to revive our strength, to revive all our powers back. So Vishnu suggested, okay, there is a pot of nectar at in the bed of the ocean. Let's all go and get that. So now if we look at that from a lens of, so if we look at the whole Samudra Manthan, churning of the ocean episode from a lens of regulation, law and order, it's like a teaching to us. Just because they are devas, just because they are demigods, Vishnu didn't say, okay, dive into the ocean and go find the nectar yourself. No. He regulated the whole episode. And the devas, by approaching the Vishnu, gave us the first lesson, which is regulation always happens, or rather we understand when we surrender to a higher authority. In our case, it's our spiritual master. Kids who go to school, it could be their teachers, it could be their parents. So submission to a higher authority lays the foundation of regulative activities or civilized activities. Without authority telling us, without our spiritual masters or even our seniors telling us what to do, what not to do, we'll just do whatever we want, and then that obviously we know is not going to take us anywhere. So regulation can happen only when one accepts higher authority. Then what did Vishnu advise them? Okay, fine, we will churn the ocean. And for churning the ocean, they used what? The rope, which was Vasuki. They used Mandra mountain to tie the rope to. And then Vishnu assumed the form of Kurma avatar and rested Mandra mountain on his back. Again, he didn't say, okay, find a pole, find a rope, and then just churn the ocean. So that's the lesson number 2 is fruitive activities need to be regulated and organized. If you want results, they have to be done in a certain way. If you need your paycheck at the end of the month, you have to put in 8 hours, 40 hours a week, or whatever it is. If you need to get good marks, you have to study. Yeah? Yeah? Yes. if you have to advance spiritually and make progress in bhakti, we have to be sincere. We have to follow our spiritual master, our guru. So that's lesson number 2. Then he also advised them, okay, fine. You can't possibly pull the rope in one direction. You need a party to pull the rope from the other side. So he suggested going with the asuras. It's rather unheard of. The very devas who lost all their power and opulence and strength and got defeated by the asuras have to go back to the asuras asking for help, giving us lessons in humility, giving us lessons in keeping our ego aside. When you're working towards a higher purpose or for the greater good, you have to do what you have to do. So that's, again, make friends with, again, if we look at it from a representation point of view, make friends with your circumstances is what Vishnu is telling them. That's your only option right now. If you want to get that pot of nectar, make peace with what you have. Make do with what you have. Again, establish an order. You can't just have everything for yourself. So that's another lesson Vishnu is giving us. Once they start churning, what's the first thing that comes out? Halahal. Halahal is poison. That's the first thing that comes out when they churn the ocean. Lord Shiva, Vaishnava Mitha Shambho, he consumes the poison. The lesson here is, once we start living a regulated life, or once we start following these regulations, initially the results could be not so pleasant for us. Again, going back to the same example, for someone who's used to sleeping until 10 in the morning, you tell him wake up at 3:30 and get ready and stand in front of Lord Krishna. It's going to be perhaps very, very difficult. For someone who's used to being a foodie, you tell them start following a sattvic ahar, rather difficult. So these are unpleasant circumstances, unpleasant outcomes of when you start living a regulated life. But you work through it, just like the devas worked through it. After the poison was out, that's when all the goodies started coming out, one after the other, one after the other. But there again, Vishnu established law and order. Who gets what? They could have been fighting. Everybody could have been fighting for the Kaustubh jewel. Everybody could have been fighting for Lakshmi. Who doesn't want Lakshmi? But then again, there was a law and order. What Prabhupada is explaining, there's law and order in place. The government is putting law and order in place for us just so that the society remains civilized. That's what Vishnu did. By distributing, regulating the distribution of all the goodies, even the nectar which came out was distributed by Vishnu. Okay, the pot came out, they didn't run for it, or they didn't just like how we do for prasadam, right? Just so anxious, will I get, will I not get? So just make sure, put heaps on the plate. No, they sat in a row and Vishnu distributed. So that's a lesson I personally got from the Samudra Manthan episode when I was thinking about it from the lens of regulation. And then in the purport, Prabhupada is also making another point that it's not just about following these regulative principles or following these regulations, how they are beneficial to us, just like what we discussed earlier. If we do our activities following the Vedic injunctions, then we are freed from all the karma or the sinful reactions. But if we are, again, like Puranjana, going out and mercilessly hunting just for the sake of it, for his own pleasure, then you will amass or you will accumulate bad karma, as they say. Like, for example, the Vedas also talk about rituals and especially how to do sacrifices, how to do yajnas and all of that, yeah? So if you take the example of Daksha, he performed the yajna. Technically it was right, There was no problem with the yajna, there was no problem with the rituals, there was no problem with the sacrifice, whatever he did. But he still faced destruction. Why? Because he broke the regulative principle of respecting a Vaishnava. He disrespected Shiva. Again, what you should not do, disrespect Vaishnavas or great devotees of the Lord. Shiva, being such a great devotee of the Lord, Daksha, in spite of doing everything so perfectly, impeccably, his yajna was perfect. He had brahmanas, qualified brahmanas doing the yajna. So there's absolutely no reason why he should face destruction. But he did. Why? Because of this one simple slip up where he acted in an uncivilized, unregulated manner. So that's what happens. You, no matter what, how perfect, how good your activities are, if they are not in line with the Shastras, or if they are not done in the way Shastras are telling us to do, or how they should be done, when they should be done, then there's no point. Another example is a doctor and a murderer. Sorry, it sounds a little morbid, but they both use knives, right? A doctor uses a knife, a murderer uses a knife. But what is the karma? A doctor is also using the knife to essentially do the same thing, to cut people. A murderer is also using the knife to cut people, but what is the reaction both of them are getting? A doctor is doing it in a prescribed manner. He's doing it with the intention of perhaps saving someone's life. He's doing it in a way that he's been taught to do by his higher authority, by his professors or whoever has taught him. But a murderer is simply using the knife to kill other people for selfish gains. And even in yesterday's purport, they were talking about hunting is actually prescribed, not prescribed is the wrong word, but Shastras give you permission to go hunt. So if we are saying hunting is a bad thing, it depends on which context you're talking about. Like when the kings used to perform all these yajnas, they used to sacrifice animals which they had to go out and hunt. But that is prescribed in the Shastras. When done correctly, when the animal is sacrificed by qualified brahmanas, bona fide brahmanas, that animal actually got a higher birth. So they are liberating that animal, which is what Shastra is telling us, and which is what was being discussed in yesterday's text also. But then, here we go out hunting as a sport, just for our own enjoyment, just to show our power over those innocent animals, then that's bad karma. Arjuna also undertook the act of war. We all know about the Kurukshetra war, right? It's such a violent act, and probably the kind of war that humanity has never witnessed. So many of them. Families got shattered, wives got widowed, children became parentless. So it's that war was so brutal. But Krishna, because Krishna instructed Arjuna to go and fight for dharma, that violent act which Arjuna undertook did not get him any sinful reactions. So if whatever activities we do, if they are done in regards to or as a way of following our spiritual masters or the Shastras, then it saves us from any sinful karmic reaction. Our Guru Maharaj always keeps talking about lifestyle engineering every time, in so many of his lectures. What is that? He's just essentially telling us to follow Shastras, to regulate our lifestyle, to modify our lifestyle in a way that we are in line with what we're supposed to do as per the instructions we have in all these books. And Prabhupada ends the purport by saying that they're just not randomly written by someone. These are instructions, or the injunctions have come from Krishna himself. Krishna instructed Nārada, and then Nārada instructed Vyasa, was it? Yeah? Or the other way around? Krishna instructed Brahma, and Brahma instructed Narada, and then Narada instructed Vyasa. And who was mentioning it? This is Bhava Prabhu mentioning that Nārada Muni, because he has these instructions directly from Krishna, makes an appearance in each of the cantos in Srimad Bhagavatam. He's instructing everyone. What are these instructions? On do's and don'ts. Simply put, they are do's and don'ts. What you should do, what you should not do. So that's how Prabhupada ends this purport, that we don't take them as mere instructions. They are not just manuals for our life. They're actually coming from a legit, or rather the only source of truth. And these instructions are set in stone, like how they say. So we follow it and go back home, back to Godhead. So that's all I have for today. Any questions, comments, corrections, feedback? Sorry about the Amrit joke. Yes, Prabhu. Sorry? Vancha kalpataruvasya? I mean, we are humans at the end of the day, right? We all have our days, we have our moods. So if we are really Vaishnavas, you ask for forgiveness, and if the person who you think you have offended is a real Vaishnava, then they forgive you, and then you move on with life. Simple. Let's keep it simple. You don't need to... I mean, if Daksha had just stood up in the yajna and putting his ego aside, the whole episode, he wouldn't have gotten a goat's head. It's as simple as that. Just keep it simple, humble, even if sometimes it works for me. Even if I'm not wrong, just by saying sorry and, okay, fine, move on. Everybody's happy. Because we don't want to waste our time in all these squabbles and all this, who's right, who's wrong, what did I say, what we should do. Just let's focus on Krishna, please. I was talking to one of the youth yesterday, and she's like, I don't think as a group we are, she's discussing something. And I was telling her that, why don't we try and work things amongst ourselves? Because what are we trying to do every day? We are trying to give pleasure to Krishna, right? Do you think by taking our problems to Krishna and asking him to solve our menial problems, which we can resolve just by talking and being humble and by being receptive and by being tolerant with each other, if we just solve our problems, don't you think that will give Krishna more pleasure rather than taking our problems to Krishna and expecting that he resolves things for us? So it's just that. So if we think that, by resolving our problems and differences, we are giving pleasure to Krishna, that's it. Hope that helps. Yeah? Anything else? All right. Granth-raj Srimad Bhagavatam ki, Srila Prabhupada ki, Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda ki. All glories to